Hello and welcome back. So in this video, we are going to take a look at how to index into list to access individual items. And I want to give you a heads up by letting you know that the way we index into list to access individual items is very similar to what you already know from tuples. So you remember that each item in a tuple had a place, okay, because they are ordered. The same applies to a list because the items in there are also ordered. The difference between the two is the mutability of the list. And each item has a place in the ordering of things. And so the first item is at index 0, the next is 1, and then plus 1 up until the end of the list, okay? And we use the square bracket to indicate which index we want to access, similar to how we did it in the tuple video. So I'm going to use the list that we created here, the mixed list, and I'm working in a file called listindexing.py. The reason I mentioned the name of the file I'm working in is so that you also know which file to access from the resources folder, okay? All right, so now let's say I print out index 0 of my mixed list. What is going to happen is I'm going to get mango because that is at index 0. If I choose 1, I'm going to get 27. If I choose 2, I'm going to get this tuple here. And if I choose 3, I am going to get the float, which also stands for a salary. And I like to mention that even though a list allows you to store items of different data types, as much as possible, you want to stay away from that unless it is really, really necessary, because it kind of forces you to have to remember what each value represents in the list. Okay, there are better data types that can handle that, which we will learn about in the future, but I'm just giving you a heads up. All right, so I'm going to run this program, Python 3, and this is listindexing.py, and you can see that indeed when we index from 0, we get the index 0, we are getting mango. Okay, so I'm going to get index 2 and then we'll see what we get for that. So because the item at index 2 is a tuple, and this is what I was talking to you about, you need to remind yourself that the item at index 2 is a tuple, and if the list is substantially big, then you're giving yourself too much headache. Okay, all right, so let's run this program again, and you can see that indeed the item at index 2 is giving us the entire tuple, because that is how the list sees it. It sees it as an element of the list, which in itself is a tuple. And because tuples are also collection data types, it is also a collection data type, and so we can index into it further. Okay, so if I want to get pi, which is at index 1 of this tuple, because Edward is at index 0, pi is at index 1, and computer science is at index 2. Then I bring another square bracket and I specify the index. So the first indexing is going to give me the tuple, and the next indexing is going to select an item in the tuple itself. Okay, so if I bring 1 here, then I'm expecting to see pi. So let's run that program again and confirm if what I said is true, and indeed it is so, because this entire item here is a tuple and it is at index 2 of the mixed list. So this is what gives us the tuple, and because the tuple itself is indexable, because it is a collection, I can also index into it and access a particular item. The same would not work if I do it for index 1 or index 0 or index 3, because the items there are not indexable. They are not things that you can access individual items of. Of course, for something you don't know now, this will work for index 1 because strings are indexable, but for index 0, because mango is a string and it is indexable, but for 1 and 3 it is not going to be possible. Let's confirm that. So if I say 1 here, which means I'm selecting 27. 27 is an integer, and integers do not allow you to access individual items the way we are doing here. So let's see what error we'll get when we do that. And then it says type error, int object is not subscriptable. So that is the correct word. I was saying indexable, but Python calls it subscriptable. So if something is subscriptable, it means you can use the indexing knowledge you have so far to be able to select individual items from it. But that thing has to be a collection and or an iterable, and an integer on its own isn't. So you cannot index into it to select something. So that's it about the easy way to index and access individual items of a list. And we're going to take a quick pause, and after the break I will show you how to index a list from the back. We call that negative indexing. So I'll see you very soon in the next video.